Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to EnvironMental Podcast.
Yeah, this is our podcast where we investigate different aspects of sustainability. We choose a topic every month and we just deep dive into the topic.
In this month, we are talking all about agriculture, and farming, and food
Mm-hmm.
production.
Yes, it is a
Mhm.
huge topic.
Massive, massive, massive. Yes. And so we spent time this week listening to a book called Farming for the Long Haul by Michael Foley.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So I I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this book because I think it's really it helped me reframe a lot of what we've been talking about over the past several months and sustainability in general in terms of the human condition, in terms of like being able to like start with food. It is one of our like base needs. If we start like if we go back to the beginning of human civilization, there at no point in time have we not been tied to our food system.
Right.
And I think this book is really about that, how deeply we need this and how badly we are sort of like messing up our resources to be able to get food,
Yeah,
and how we think about farming on the timeline of a few years, but we should be thinking about it in a timeline that is much longer than that. So,
totally. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree that I think that the seeing how much kind of quote unquote in like current like industrial farming
mhm.
has blinded us to the potential of any other option is such a crazy thing because that's only been around for 100 years versus millennia of traditional farming methods
Right.
that were quite sustainable, literally, like literally in
Yeah.
terms of ecologically, but also just it was built into society, like a
Right.
lot of these, kind of traditional farming practices and how they were organized and stuff. And that was a really, really fascinating to kind of, I guess, just see how far we've gotten, not in a good way though, like far
Yeah.
away we've gotten
Yeah.
from food production and in such a short amount of time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just, I mean, this is yet another example of how European colonialism has just destroyed the planet. I'm inclined to say.
Yeah.
Is that a controversial
Yeah.
thing to say? Probably, but like, yeah, it's not untrue. Um,
Right.
yeah, and so yeah, essentially the book was, you know, how can we farm in a post fossil fuel age? How can we sustain ourselves and eat and live our lives
Mm-hmm.
when our reliance on fossil fuels becomes impossible, or
Mm-hmm.
like, we can no longer rely on fossil fuels. So
Right.
that was sort of the goal of the book, and I think that it did a good job at kind of um, teaching that, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a really interesting way, I think um my I'm really, really excited now. I was already really excited to have a garden because I don't think of myself as a farmer, but I'm definitely like a hobbyist plant grower, and it allowed me to kind of start to think that maybe I'm a farmer. Like
Mhm.
I grow herbs and medicinal herbs, but I'm been planning on trying to grow food, and he helped me reframe the idea of like, what is a farmer? What is a It's just somebody that like grows food or grows stuff we need. And I feel really excited about being able to say I think I want to be a farmer. Like, and so that felt really good.
Yeah.
And it felt really positive. This is something that like in the and I still feel this way because it feels idealistic, even though he's giving real solutions and even and real like this is how they did it here and this is what's possible and here's what to look at and here's like 15 different ways to save your soil fertilization. Like he gives all of these tangible options, but it still feels so idealistic and kind of like out of the realm of possibility right now,
Yeah.
which I think is problematic. Not in a negative, not in a like he's too idealistic way, because actually he's quite realistic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I feel like this book is ahead of its time, and it should be remembered when we're in an actual emergency, because
Mm-hmm.
we are rapidly approaching this emergency where our farmers will be priced out of the the fuel that they need to grow their land, like they just will. And
Yeah.
I think right now they're in this we're still in inertia, we're still like barreling forward, trying to keep up, trying to put down the railroad tracks as we're in the train, but like we're going to hit a wall. And when we hit that wall, I think this book will be a very good starting place for what we need to do to
Mm-hmm.
solve that problem. And smart farmers will read it now
Mm-hmm.
and start building. He uses the word resilience a lot,
Yeah.
building that resilience into their farms now. And I certainly will. I was just talking with Tom about this the other day, and I was like, we need to grow our food and we need to have our herbs stocked. I got my herbs stocked, they're right here, but I need more, and I
Yeah.
need to have some food available. And he's like, you sound like a doomsdayer.
A
I was
prepper.
like,
Yeah.
hi, I'm a clinical herbalist. I won't get killed because I know how to treat people's stuff. Like
Mhm.
I straight up and I'm a realistic doomsday prepper because we're headed there.
You're
We
not
just
you're
are.
not wrong. And I think one of the yes, on to that point, I think that was something that I really took from this book was he did a really good job at kind of illustrating how much we need those skills that have been long forgotten, like herbalism or like but being a butcher, like canning food, fermenting food, these
Mhm.
ways of preserving food that are just they're just skill sets that aren't as valued right now, but kind of go beyond like an individual's lifespan and are these kind of these skills that kind of I guess need to be passed down from generation to generation, and I think that this generation has missed out on them.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I definitely feel lucky. My Aunt Kay taught me canning. They still make jam. They still like she's like one feels like one of the last homesteaders,
yeah,
like that generation.
yeah, yeah, if you if you had any inkling of like wanting to create a homestead or live a little with like a sustainable little farm, this book will definitely make you feel like you're ready to
Yeah.
do that, like you're like, I'm
Yeah.
down, this is it, I'm gonna go in. And I think
Yeah.
that
I'm
that was
ready.
cool.
Yeah, I'm like, all right. I get it.
Yeah,
No chill.
I'm like,
I can do that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm convinced that all I need is like a couple acres and I could have like the most like
I think
um
we could do it.
high yielding farm. Yeah. Yeah. And it was really, really a cool way of showing that like just the full idea of how we are farming right now is just so is we just missed the mark. It's just not
Yeah, it's a failed
it's not
experiment.
working. Yeah, it's it's not working, but unfortunately in the past 100 years we have forced that method upon the world and it has done a significant amount of damage.
Yeah,
Um, and has really kind of thrown a wrench into how some traditional societies ran themselves and governed and and yeah, it's really
yeah,
that part is quite frustrating to learn about, right? Where
yeah,
so in other places like just doing your part in working on the farm was like how you became a member of that little
right.
community and then you get certain benefits because you put work in. Like it's almost like
Mhm.
like a co-op, like how we
Yeah,
think of as a co-op here, but like that's just how they run
that's just
things.
society. That's
Yeah.
just how it works. You work together with your neighbors and you all build together a nice life. You weave the baskets grown on your neighbor's land, and
Right.
you go help till this farm over here, and that's where you get your tomatoes, and you know this really nice reciprocal
Yeah.
society. And he talks a lot about like market economics and false economics, which I'm really interested in, this like false economics of
Yes.
agriculture, um, and how this is the big issue, because I think that makes sense to me, that like the economics of agriculture don't work at scale because of things like microclimates and soil care and plant care and
Mhm.
labor. Like those things don't scale without more people. And that doesn't really make sense. Like when I said that to Tom, he was like, that literally doesn't make sense, like, with the math. And I said, yeah, but
It's not math.
it's not math. It's
Yeah.
the planet, which is built out of like physical, tangible things and chaos and magic and like all of these pieces that have to come together, and the valuation of farming isn't on an economic level. It is on a, this feeds me, this feeds my family, this barn can be used for several different ways, and the cow that I like, I feel good when I hang out with the cow, but also it gives me butter and milk, and there's this whole reciprocal relationship. The manure of the cow, the manure of the chicken, like
Right.
it it all works together, and that valuation has been removed from our monocropped, like big ag farms
Right.
that don't work in the same way, that don't work to scale. So that made so much sense when I was reading it. Like, why, how did we get here? We were asking this question, how did we get here? And he answered it really well with this false economics that he was talking about. We removed the valuation and put it only onto profit, money.
Right. What have you produced versus what you have like wasted? But like, what is waste when you're maybe utilizing that for compost, which is then going to go into building the soil? Or like, it's not a, it's not an equal relationship. It's not
Right.
like a balancing a checkbook.
Exactly.
There, yeah. How do you put a monetary value on the health of soil?
Right. And how
You can't.
you can't. And
Yeah.
how do you, right, like herbicides. If you just
Mhm.
look at just herbicides, like weeds are so good for your garden. They put new nutrients into the soil and like help bring in pollinators. And yeah, and they can also be used for food sometimes. Like weeds aren't bad, but we have all this herbicide, and now like that just kills stuff. Like inside, it kills stuff. So
It's in the name. Yeah.
in the name, like at what point do we say okay, and then we add all this herbicide, and then we to kill the things we don't want, which is just growing stuff. Then we have to make seeds that are anti the herbicide so that we can kill the things we don't want and still grow the things we do want. But those things that we do want to grow, they leach that chemical into the ground, and the soil degrades. You can't grow anything else in that soil, so you have to add chemical fertilizer to it, which is false nutrients that isn't available to the soil. It doesn't it would all of which kills decomposers like worms and the little roly polies and all these dudes. So now you just have like dirt,
Well,
like
unusable,
unusable
chemical
shit.
laden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you do? That's where we're at.
That's where we're at, right? Is that we're
Literally
stuck
where
with a
we're at.
really low quality soil,
Right.
and we're stuck with a system that thinks we can chemical fix it all with chemicals.
But does it, that has a lower per capita yield than just like keeping the weeds
Yeah.
and growing
I
the
didn't
plant?
know that actually. I didn't like that was an
Okay.
interesting fact that I learned was that yeah, there's actually an inverse relationship between the size of the farm and its productivity. So the bigger the farm, the less productive it actually is in
Yeah.
terms of what it's yielding.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
So I actually am curious about that because my like because I'm wondering if we just have the size like that, if that's a one-to-one relationship, like the if the size of the farm is small
Hmm.
and the yield is really good, is that because it's a small crop shareholder and you're tending the plant, tending the soil, like, and you're like working on it? Like if you scaled that level of love up,
Right.
then then
Yeah.
would that scale? I kind of feel like it might, but I also kind of feel like it wouldn't, because then you get into um, microclimates and different levels of nutrients. My soil might have different levels of nutrients than the soil across down the way, you
Hmm.
know? So that's especially a reality in the Netherlands because of the levels of like topsoil versus sand versus nutrient dense soil. Like that's something that he didn't really go into, because I think he was really saying like the small three,
Hmm.
4, 5 acres that are really deeply cared for in a
Yeah.
community way versus these like massive scale 1,000 acre things
Industrial farm. Yeah.
that we think should work. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right. There's definitely other factors. It is not just size that is
Right.
the indicator of yield. Like, yeah,
Right.
right. But
This
it's,
is
I
it
guess,
though.
small and dense farms with high biodiversity, I think was
Mhm.
specifically
The
the
highest yield.
the terminology used that had, yeah. So like small, densely packed, high biodiversity, often like hand
Mm-hmm.
worked,
Mm-hmm.
has higher yield than big
That makes total sense.
rows. It makes total sense. Right. It makes complete sense. Eh, Yeah. I mean,
You're not dealing
but
with a
like
huge team.
in the book he talks about like, the European settlers seeing like this field that looks like chaos to them
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that that's what needs to change, and that order means like rows and clearing in between so
Mm-hmm.
we can put the machines. It's just like this just it's just a sad, I think,
Yeah.
like they just got
Yeah.
it so wrong. They got it
And
so wrong, and
yeah.
they went everywhere with the wrong information and forced it upon everyone.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. Yeah. Like they showed up and they were like, this isn't straight.
Yeah, we don't get it. That looks messy.
That looks like a mess.
Yeah, that
And
doesn't stick with our values of straight lines, rules,
line.
regiment.
I mean, have you ever seen like European, a traditional European like monk garden? It has like the you definitely have, but it was started. It has like the square in the middle, and then it has like hedge of head like a hedge, and then it has like all the hedgy shapes, and then in between the like square of hedge, there's like
Mhm.
an herb or a plant growing.
I'm not sure if I have. I'm not sure.
It's it's just everywhere here.
Okay.
It's fucking everywhere. I might be their worst nightmare. Like I'm just like, I want this. I'm because I plant that way, companion plants, and it looks messy. But if you
Yeah,
walk through my garden, I will be able to tell you the use of every single plant or the
exactly.
reason it's there or whatever. It's all intentional. And this was the same that they found with the when the Europeans came to America. They were like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's still like that here. And like Tom was just he's really into this right now. He's told me every time we see somebody he tells this story. He was reading an article, and the article said that the Netherlands needs to learn how to rewild
Mm,
their spaces because the the it's better when things are more wild for the environment.
yeah.
That like the Netherlands is two straight lines with the literally it is a you'll see it next time you come here. We'll just you can walk around my neighborhood is right here. It's like a hedgerows of square with us in a square, and then with a plant growing in the middle of the square, and then there's like a hedge all the way around the garden, and
Mhm.
there's lines of hedges that like break up different areas of planting. And I asked a guy one time, like a one of those guys that tell you about history of a space, like why gardens are like that. And he told me that it's because monks used to plant like herb gardens that way so they would separate all of the medicinal herb gardens. It was like that's the traditional
Hmm.
medicine garden, but it just became so common or so it's so beautiful in these like nice square
Yeah.
spaces that it just became the norm. And planting in rows is just because it's easier for tilling.
Right. Yeah. It's easier to bring machinery through there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just kind of crazy that we just so quickly made assumptions that the system that these Europeans thought was like more aesthetically pleasing was the way to
Yeah. And
do
I think
all of it.
economy of scale, like we got obsessed with tech and economy of
Mm.
scale that was possible that we just went with it. And as the big farms scaled, the little farms were like kind of just run over because the
Yeah.
big farms now they're producing and then they're overproducing and they're driving these costs down for food. But that doesn't make like why are we driving costs down for food when the food is less nutrient dense and your per capita yield is that doesn't work. So we have these economies of scale that are just just not working and just never have, and we've just like kept doing it.
It's a bubble that is gonna burst.
Yeah, do you think that this is a terrible question. Do you think that we will run out of fossil fuel or have like unfarmable topsoil first
Hmm.
in the race to the apocalypse? Which do you think comes first?
Who's number one? It honestly might be topsoil. Seemingly from this book, I didn't know that at all, but it sounded like that was, I mean, they're both like bound to happen within the next like 20, 30 years. Like both are definitely going to
They're going to
happen.
be in dire straits. The food cost is going to go crazy, and
Yeah.
the price of gas and fossil fuels is going to skyrocket in like
Yeah. It's
15 years.
Yeah, it's going to make people have to depend on their community for
Yeah.
a sustenance for
Yeah,
everything.
totally. And if we don't start thinking about it and building resilience in right now, imagine what will happen to poor communities. People are going to die.
I
People
think
are
a
going to
lot of
literally
people.
starve to death
Yeah, it's gonna
or
be
freeze.
really. Yeah, I that there's a lot in this book that I didn't know. Like he gave the example of like ancient Mesopotamia, who I remember learning about in like sixth grade or something, as like they invented aqueducts and agriculture as we kind of know it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that they like agricultured the shit out of their land to the point where they all fucking died. Like I
Oh,
didn't know that. That was mentioned in the book. Like he was like they that society ended because they lost all their topsoil through erosion because they and like caused like flooding and environmental issues
yeah.
with how they were running. I didn't know that at all. I didn't know that they like that society like actually ended because of,
I didn't either. I thought they ended because colonists came and killed them.
well, I according to this book, like the yeah,
I believe it. They were an
they're
advanced society.
but
Why are we
they
repeating that history?
why didn't we learn that history? Right. Why are we only looking to them? Like, why are we only looking at the positive side? Like, yeah, they, invented this method, but it was their downfall also that I wrote it as they agricultured the shit out of the land. In my notes, like they just did it too much. Yeah, it wasn't sustainable. And then they ran out of topsoil. I actually don't fully like know the concept of what is considered topsoil. Is that
Oh
just like
yeah.
literally what's on top of like that's like the tillable land? Like and then underneath that is like hard
I wouldn't know. I
earth.
don't know if it, I don't know when the top soil ends. I think that it is like different depending on where you are. Because
Yeah.
yeah, what makes I can show you the top layer of soil, but like I don't know if the sand underneath of like there's topsoil, which is or
Mhm.
the what I think of as topsoil, but I'm probably wrong based on how I'm listening to this book, is the top layer of soil that like you plant in.
Mhm.
And then there's another layer under that where the roots grow. And then there's a
Okay.
layer under that where like really deep roots grow, but it's sand.
Mm. Hmm.
Sand is like what
Well, I
you
don't know if it's sand everywhere.
know. It's sand. Oh, I don't know. But it's like at some point it becomes in I think in most places it has to become sand because we have
Yeah.
to be able to build on um like earth that can compact, and that is essentially
Hmm.
sand. Because if it's so I don't know if topsoil is like the top layer, or if topsoil is like
Yeah, I'm not,
the
I
whole
mean,
compactable, like you
my,
wouldn't on top of.
I think it's just the top layer because it's like it is what's most susceptible to erosion or to flood, to being swept away in a flood or something. It's that more,
Yeah, let's Google it really quick
yeah.
so that we know.
But I mean, he gives a lot of really good examples of how to like care for topsoil and how to.
It is that the top layer. We are correct.
Hey, look at that.
There you
Words.
go. Farmers like name stuff in a way that makes sense to
It sure does. It's very
I
literal.
I love farmers. They're so like top soil
Hmm.
on the it's the top part.
Oil on the top. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. There's a
And like
lot of.
half. Oh, go
Hmm?
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of there's a lot of work to be done to be able to transition into something
Yeah.
to move away from the current
Yeah.
setup. But it like wasn't that long ago where this was
No.
a thing, where there was a town with a grocer, there's a butcher in town, there was a, like the makers in town, there were individuals whose livelihoods were built around their skill set,
Mm-hmm.
and we've lost that entirely.
Yeah, it's a shame. I'm like half really fucking stressed by the reality in this book and half really, really hopeful because for me, what makes me the most excited is is kind of feeling and remembering that there are so many options that we already know.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
like we already have this whole situation totally figured out. It is written down. It's in every farmer's almanac. We know all of these solutions. We know how to oxen till there. This isn't like this isn't like ancient Greece where we like have some information but not everything,
Mm-hmm.
where some things are written down about how they lived their lives. So we're not like ancient farms. This is 100 years ago. Like the
Right.
printing press existed.
It
I
was
have
written in
Culpeper.
common language in
Yeah,
English.
exactly.
Yeah.
I have a Culpeper book right here that was written more than like the latest farmer's almanac by somebody. Like we
Yeah.
have the answers. We know how to do this.
We
It's
do.
not new, but it will take a massive societal change.
I mean, but it's like the people in our generation aren't choosing to do that traditional life
No.
that their parents or grandparents lived. That was another interesting fact in this book, was that 75% of US farms are owned by people that are over 65 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote that down too. I was like, holy crow.
That's a
That's
lot.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, his point in telling that was who is going to take this over?
Right.
Our generation is,
Right.
has gone in a different direction with career paths where we, so much is centered around the internet and
Yeah.
all of these emerging technologies.
Yeah,
And
and that makes sense, right? From childhood, we were like told you're going to go to college, you're going to get a real job. It's a blue collar or it's a white collar job. Blue collar
yeah,
jobs are shit. Like you don't live that life.
totally. It was stigmatized to learn a
Exactly.
trade. Yeah.
Yeah. And and it still is. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
if somebody comes and they say to most societies in most part of the world, in the Western world, I'm a farmer, like,
It's negative. It has a negative
oh,
connotation. You're oh, you're probably
dumb.
dumb redneck. Like, yeah, it has so many like
Right.
negative associations. And that's like, who started that?
Yeah, who did
Like,
that?
who's talking shit on farmers? That's just hard. Like,
Oh my God, yeah.
hard
Yeah.
and incredibly necessary. There's probably
Yeah.
no more necessary skill
No,
set.
and you have to know so much stuff to be a farmer. Like
Yeah.
the amount that you have to know about a single plant to grow a farm, to grow it is incredible, right? Like here's a plant.
Yeah.
Like I know, and this is one of the easiest plants to grow ever. I actually don't know its name. It's like, but I have to know that it really loves water. It needs a lot of water. It it's the only plant I know that really loves to have its feet wet. It likes
Mm.
a lot of sun, and if it gets not all the sun, if it gets a lot of sun, it will keep growing like this.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't get a lot of sun, it will flower and it will turn a little lighter. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
yeah,
No, every plant has such a unique set of needs, and every animal
totally.
has a unique set of needs. And
You have to know all of it to have a farmer. I know
right.
every single plant in this room, they all have different needs.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
7 or 8 plants around here.
I've
Like,
tried to grow basil in my house like 4 times, just growing, just
yep.
trying to save it from getting it at the grocery store. Never once has.
Some plants don't aren't about it, you know. I can't fucking grow rosemary. I can't grow
I've
rosemary.
never been able to grow rosemary either.
I
Yep.
can't do it. I don't know.
But
I'm growing lavender for the first time ever. I feel like that's a huge spiritual movement. I can literally grow hundreds of plants. All of my lavender forever has died.
oh.
I have lavender and it is growing. And I feel like I have unlocked the secret of the world. Like,
I know. Yeah, no, it's like really like farmers have such an integral knowledge of like the inner workings of the planet, and it's such like
yeah,
an incredible grounding experience to be so close to nature. And it's like, yeah, it is definitely a unfortunately kind of a dying breed of human. And that is something that we have to reckon with, right? Like now.
right now, people are going to die. Hey, raise your kids to be farmers.
Yeah,
Like,
man. But it's like the system has put them out of business, you know? It's like it's not surprising that the people, our parents' generation wanted quote unquote better for their kids,
right,
thinking that like, you should work in an office job, that was just like that
right.
societally, that was
There's no
such a
money in farming.
misconception.
Right. But there
But
also is no money in farming.
there's
Like,
no money in farming. That's true. It is sort of it's a
like
completely a
there
thankless
are,
job.
yeah, there are a few, definitely not like the current traditional farm, like the farming economics in that way that they've been told for the last 100 years. There's no money in that. Like food prices are crazy low, and
Hmm.
it's really hard to keep up with everything going on with your farm. And then you have to sell and you have to compete with other, like, no,
Yeah.
there's no money in that right now. You would really have to raise your kids to be community farmers where you can barter and trade and find value. Like if you own your house, you should be sort of growing your food and finding a way to like share and create reciprocity
Right.
in your neighborhood. Like that's really where it has to start. It
It,
has to start
yeah.
there.
Yeah, but land ownership is yeah, it's
It's
I mean, it's a huge issue
yeah,
too, right? It's like
yeah,
who owns this land? How can we
yeah. And
how
and
I
like yeah. And he also talks a lot about like I've heard this term, the tragedy of the commons,
yeah.
before, and like he talks about the commons in such a positive way. and gives so many examples of how the commons work well in societies and communities that aren't individualistic,
Mhm.
that I actually felt guilt because I cannot remember where I learned this, but we were learning about the tragedy of the commons. It might
Mhm.
have been in like um how to win friends and influence people. Like I think it was one of the books that we've like previously talked
There
about.
were some similarities in a previous book for sure. I recognize that as well. Yeah, but I can't
Yeah,
recall what. But
and I think it was that where he just talked about how people got so greedy and how they got this like I own this part and I did this much work and so I get this. Like it became like a I situation rather
mhm.
than a best for the community situation.
Mhm.
And it happened as America in particular, but westernized countries
Yeah.
in general, like started transitioning into this like everything for me mentality.
Yeah.
And I think really what this boils down to and kind of keeps boiling down to is we need to be working in hyper local communities to like and that can't that and we tried really hard for the past 100 years to make an economy of scale, and that doesn't really work on our day-to-day lives. It's cool, we can talk across the world, it's really cool that like
Sure.
we can cryptocurrency and share money around everything.
It's
And
made a few people very wealthy.
exactly, but
Mhm.
like in general, I live in this like 10 square mile space. That's my life actually.
Right.
Would
Yeah.
I want
It's
all of us? That's me.
I think and it's hard to conceptualize a life different than the one that we've become used to, where it's like, how do we transition into embracing a culture of sharing that isn't so individualistic, isn't so you need to pull up your bootstraps
Right.
or else you're failing. Like, what, since when is food not a human right? Since when
Right.
are a lot of things not a human right? And it's,
Right.
well, it's because we've commodified everything. We've, and
Yeah, and
it's
everything.
it does not work. It's like
It doesn't
we
work.
the people in control have given us just enough of like a piece of the pie to feel like we've done our thing and we've gotten successful and now that's the dream. But it's like, but do you have a community? But
Right.
are you eating healthy food? Are you well? Are you happy?
Right. Do you have leisure time? He talks a lot about the
Yes,
importance of
right.
leisure.
What
And
is your
holy
life
shit, I'm
like?
like, oh, that sounds nice. Like
Leisure time? What?
leisure time. Like this idea that it is important. I would love to be able to build that into Dandelion. That's one of our big goals is to build this sort of like leisure time into what we're building because it is very important.
Yeah.
And we don't do that in the States. And it is such a radical shift. And that's like people around the world make fun of Americans
Yeah.
because we don't we don't take vacation.
Well,
Like
we don't get paid to.
exactly.
People get fired if they take too long of a
Yeah.
vacation.
And it's like
Yeah.
here, a 3 week vacation is normal.
Right. That is
Like,
unfrickin' heard of here. Yeah.
right.
Like,
What? And like, that's wrong that that's not the norm, I think.
yeah.
I think,
I mean, yeah. Or we're the people who like spout family values, traditional values. It's like, where the fuck are they in this conversation of like taking care of people? Where are they?
Oh,
They left the chat. They they're not a part of that conversation, like this, it's
and why not?
I don't know. I don't know. Like at what point did we stop wanting to care for one another?
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
a really good question. And I think he uses this word brittle society
Mm,
at the last part of the book, and I just went, yeah,
it's a really good term for what we've
that was
got
a
going on here.
it's a
Yeah.
really good term. He's talks so much about resilience and building in resilience and all these different ways to do it, and then he just said we live in a really brittle society, and that resonated with me. I was like, oh, well, it's our job to fix that. No one, that's the other thing. So we read all these books and we do this podcast and we spend our time learning about this. But I mean, the reality is we can't think about it like we're learning history. We have to solve these issues, like we're going to really quickly run into, like, it's not a theory anymore.
Yeah.
Like climate change is going to disrupt our lives. The end of fossil fuel availability, or the demand versus supply, the supply issue of fossil fuels, the degradation of fossil fuel, or the degradation of the soils, like all of those things have less than a generation until we have to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the scheme of humanity, in the scheme of Earth, we've procrastinated long enough. We are at the crunch time now.
Yeah.
And like I think with EnvironMental and with Dandelion, and in a lot of ways in our own personal lives, we are working towards trying to figure out what people can do and what we can do and how to make these changes. But what it ultimately will boil down to, and we keep running into this, is that we have to use our global connections to make small local communities.
And get inspiration from other small local communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Right.
share these small local communities
Mm-hmm.
around. And like,
Yeah.
yeah,
A network of people who are dedicated to this. And I think that to your point, like another interesting thing that he mentioned was that, like, people can talk about this all day long, but in order to do this stuff and run these small communities and run a local little farm, like, you have to have meetings, and there has to be logistics, and there has to be like
right.
committees of people, and that is all very hard, and not like the pretty, like,
Yeah,
happy side of it is that there is, like, it's like a ton of work, and we have to have people that are dedicated to doing it, and it's like, but no one's in charge. Like,
right,
we're in that part where it's like we need a leader, we need a good example to then, like, inspire other local communities
right. And is there
to develop
one?
this. I don't
And
know right now. Yeah.
yeah, I don't, maybe that's one of our searches, is like, can we find a community leader that is doing this work that we can talk to or get inspired by, because it
Yeah.
is community. It's not like that's that's the other issue. We keep being like, who's in charge? And we're looking for this like big overarching person, or in environmental, like, NGO or something to like
Yeah.
take charge and like do the thing. But we're simultaneously looking for this like big ass plan, and also this
Yeah.
local community thing. And it's becoming really clear that, like, oh shit, we might have to start our own communities
without any examples, without,
without an
yeah.
example. Like, are we getting to a place where like we have is that really what we're working towards with environmental, like with our own our own investigation? Like, are we working towards these like, oh, I'm learning how to build a community and we're really just talking about it every month because now I have all this information about what needs to change and probably how to change it, you know? Or is that what we're building? I don't know. That's kind of a
I don't know either. Yeah.
it kind of feels a little bit less like us going, okay, here's a problem, how do we solve it? Here's a problem, how do we solve it? It's local
I mean,
community, local community.
the
Like,
solutions are always going to be local and community based because that's where you have the most control and there is the most ability for like large governments don't move quickly. They never have and they never will. And like he used like, like FEMA and reactions to like environmental disasters as an example of this. It's sort of like who comes to help you when your house is underwater? It's your
right,
neighbor. It's
right,
your neighbor. It's not the federal government.
right.
Like,
The local fire department,
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
it's a community member
Right.
that is going to be your first helper.
Mm-hmm.
And we only see that, we only feel that in emergencies, and we're not in that yet. So it's
Right.
how do we convince people that this actually is the emergency time when we don't see it yet? That's the biggest
Right.
issue with climate
Right.
change
And
and
maybe it's just about not thinking of it as the emergency. It is the emergency, but like maybe it's just being a neighbor, you know? Maybe it just boils down to knowing the people on your block, having a garden, having them over for tea, sharing resources. Like maybe it's just that simple. You just sort of like start doing it, start talking about it. And it's not this conversation like the world is gonna end, guys. Because well, it fucking is,
yeah.
but like maybe it's just, hey, I have some tomatoes growing. Like, do you are I noticed that in the front of your yard you have rosemary and I can't grow rosemary for shit. So like if I give you some tomato, maybe it is just doing that. I don't know.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I suppose
I have no
I just
idea.
assume that people don't move unless they are faced with an emergency. But that might not, that's just an assumption. But
Right.
they also move when
I think if you're just kind,
with kindness. Yeah.
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 If you just build the community, and I think maybe that's what resilience really is like resilience in a community is like it exists with or without the emergency,
Yeah.
like I think about my street, the people that lived in this house were the first people. This was the first house on the block, and everybody when we moved in here, everybody around came and they were like, you're the first new face we've ever seen here. We it's nice, and in this house in particular here,
Yeah.
and and they were big members of the community. They had people in the backyard. We found all sorts of like carnival stuff. They were like really into that community membership, and it made us feel like, oh, we have the torch now. We have to like know our neighbors. Yana was born. She's new. We better make a card. They have something going on. We better know what that is. Like so
Yeah.
I think like this is just something we've lost.
Yeah.
And we should probably just try to be good neighbors, talk to strangers. I don't know.
It's a good step one. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Be
the
kind.
takeaways. Be kind.
Kind. Be friendly with your neighbors.
Yeah, it has to start somewhere.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Jeez. We have a big long road ahead of us, dude. It's it's possible. You can see the
Yeah.
future, you can see the possibility, but like holy shit. There's
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. We'll see. If yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the gist of it. That is where it has to start. It has, yeah,
yeah.
gotta participate.
Yeah. So what if we have a challenge of like meet your neighbor this month? We just like say, okay, if you're in a place where you feel like you're going to be for a while, go say hi to your neighbor. Or if you don't want to say hi to them because like introversion is real, uh,
Mm-hmm.
write them in just a note or like a little card that just says like, hi, I'm your neighbor and I live over here and just something nice.
Perhaps, maybe just, I mean, I literally don't even ever see my neighbors. I'm always here. I'm never not home. And I don't ever see anyone, which is really interesting. I kind of live in a back space, I suppose, but
Mhm.
uh yeah, it is really interesting. But
But maybe if you like,
even just like a wave would be a lot for this particular neighborhood.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the healing we need.
Yeah, right.
You
Even
know,
yeah,
that's what
like
we're talking about. So maybe just a little card.
make a little step
One.
to just be a person and acknowledge the other people that live near you. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a good step. Yeah.
yeah, that's a big, and that's a, so for some reason, that's a
Yeah.
big step, you know? And
It is because it's like that. I mean, unless you live in a small town, like, right, where it's like, or homeowners, I think it may be a little bit easier. Like in an apartment complex, people kind of tend to hate themselves, but it's sort of like, or hate each other because it's like they just are
or
stuck.
both, probably both.
Probably both, because you hate your situation and you're like, work a ton and you don't have any ownership of what's going on and where you live. And that sucks. And I know yeah, that feeling is a tough one. I think a lot of people are faced with that because it's like being a homeowner, you have a lot more control and
Yeah.
you
But
feel like
I
you're,
think being faced with it together might be better than being faced with it alone. But I don't know because I've only had two neighbors before now three neighbors that I spoke with. So,
yeah, like I know, yeah, like my where my mom lives is like a little housing community. They know all of their neighbors and they like talk, like they when Northern California was doing having a lot of like power outages for like several days at a time, and like they were sharing like generators, and like
mhm.
people were like banding together, and that was like really cool. That was really, really cool. Um, and so it's possible. It's entirely possible, but we just have to have a reason to talk to one another.
Yeah,
And
but
like,
we don't. I think that's the thing is we don't have to have a reason to talk to one another. The reason is we just want to say hi.
you want to. Yeah, no, I guess that's the reason, right? You just
That's the
need to have a
reason. We want to.
desire to talk to one another, or like an yeah,
For
yeah,
introverted humans, it is hard to have a desire to ever want to speak to
anyone.
anyone. Please don't knock on my door. Um, but I do think it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just made that choice right now.
Yeah, no, it is. It absolutely is. And just, I mean, just being kind of uh, to other people. People are just people. Like there's no one that's better or worse or
Yeah.
inferior or superior ever. Uh,
We have to work with each other if we're going to get through this. Like if we're going to, and there isn't like another side, right? We're going to get to a place where we don't have resources that we're used to having. Everything has to change and we need to make that change together. It's going to suck really bad if you don't know the people around you and you can't
yeah,
trust them.
yeah, yeah, it's true.
Like or you don't know who you can trust. I think, you know, if shit went down right now, I don't know. I might know where to go. You know what I mean? Like if shit goes down right now, who can you trust of your neighbors or who can you not trust of your neighbors?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reality that unfortunately I think we're living in, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I would go to Yana's house because they just had a baby. Yana is the baby. I don't know their names. Sorry, guys.
Okay. I don't know where I would go. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't have a really many people. I have a very small number of people that I know there that live in this
Right.
area. So yeah, that's a
Yeah. So I think just sending a note to your neighbors and say hi is a really
hi,
interesting.
I'm your neighbor.
Yeah, just hi, I'm your neighbor. Just wanted you to know who we are, because I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a weird reality we live in.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Tragedy of the commons, man. Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
Well, yeah, this will be
Do
an
you have any
interesting
sad
one to
news to end
continue
on?
learning about. What was that?
We have
I,
good news to end on.
I don't know. I don't know about this one. I mean,
Yeah,
the good news is that, like, yeah, if you have the ability to own land, like, and you know, wanted to start a really dense little farm, like, you freaking can. And if you have a sense of how to market it, that is what is making money right now.
yeah,
Like, you can make a life out of that, and you can also sustain your own lifestyle and your, you know, your family on that
yep.
too. So it is entirely possible, but it does take resources up front. So and land and yeah.
And
So
work and yeah,
ton of work, yeah. but
but it's
but it's
possible.
an option. Yeah, it is possible. It definitely makes me want to grow more, just to like just to develop that skill set. I think it just really, like, you know, even maybe like maybe it should be like, let's all just try to learn one of those dying skills like canning or fermentation, or like like maybe we can share some
I could
fermentation
see you being
tips.
really good at canning. I could see you not even just really good at it, but really liking it.
Probably. I
It makes a really
love
cool sound
I
when
love
it,
mason jars. I do like the idea, and I would love to know more about, like, yeah.
yeah, it's easy. It's a thing that takes time, and then
Mhm.
at the end, it's really satisfying because when a can seals, it like makes this cool like ping sound.
Pop. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of this sounds really good. I've never had like the space to do any of that, but I don't necessarily not have it now. I guess, I mean, we
You
can
can
make
make
space. I can make
yeah.
space. Yeah. Um, yeah,
Can
for some of those things. And then, yeah, just a step into more like not self-reliance, because again, we want, it's these are like skills that you can share, but if you develop it within yourself, then it's something that you can teach, you know,
Yeah.
your family. Like
Yeah.
that's generational skill sharing.
Skills
That
share. Yeah. Learning a
yeah.
skill. You know what we should do, Courtney? And probably not this year, but next year, because this year we're almost to the end and I'm going to be there. But maybe next year we should go to Michigan. And Aunt Kay should teach us. I'm volunteering her to teach us how to make jam.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So yeah,
And
totally. It seems easy enough. And then yeah, and you got a
then you
bunch
have
of
fucking jam, and it's so good.
so
It,
good, so much better than that preservative stuff. And then you feel like you're like did a thing. Like that's
yeah.
really like pride.
And then you know how to make jam, which means you can make jam out of anything. They make jam out of rose hips, and it is like super good. And it's like I
Mhm.
didn't know you could make jam out of rose hips, but they do because they
That's
learned how to
awesome.
tried it. It's
Yeah.
really good.
And what a good like gift that is. I handmade
Yeah,
this gem. And people are like, what? Like, what?
yeah,
And then
yeah. Because
you've unlocked their sense of wonder and freaking teach
all
them.
of a sudden, we got jam makers,
Dude, we got a jam class going on. We got a
jam
jam
class.
session. I'm
Yes.
into it. I'm into it. I want to learn these skills. Yes, these like traditional skills that we've just like
Yeah.
thought were silly or not necessary.
Outdated or whatever. And the thing is about that is that when you like with jam in particular, or like canning or all these things, you end up with a ton of stuff. You
Yes.
have to share. You be otherwise you just have way too much.
You're
So
hoarding. Yeah.
yeah, you're hoarding canned food. Cool. But like if you grow next season, you don't need it, right? Like you that's where I think that's where this reciprocity system came in anyway, because you have a surplus.
That's true. Yeah, that would actually be a really cool thing to like share with your neighbors. It's like if you if you're
Yeah.
making jam, then you're like, I had extra if you want
Extra.
some. Yeah.
That's how I got to be friends with my neighbor in Oakland was she made stuff out of wine and wine glasses and was making wine
Yeah.
vinegar. She's a sommelier and she just her wine went to vinegar and we just like traded herbal medicine for vinegar. Literally, that's the
So
only
cool.
reason why we knew each other.
Yeah.
Like her name is Alveda and she's really cool. Like that's the system. That's
That's
all
the
it is.
system. That's the basis of it. So
Yeah. Totally
yeah,
a possibility.
it
Meet your
is.
neighbors, learn a skill.
Be a human, contribute.
Turns
Yes.
out we're all
There,
humans.
yeah, there's totally. Yeah. I think that's the end of this one. But yeah, we have a lot more learning and investigating to do. So yeah, if you guys have any questions that you want answered, definitely let us know.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking with us this long.
Yeah.
Going through
All right.
it.
Yeah. You never know how long these are going to go, but they just go and it
They just
happens.
go till we're done.
Natural. And we're
That's
done.
fine. It's
So that's the
good.
end of this one.
Yeah. And if you like it, you should hit the subscribe button so that you get told about the next one, which is a week from now. But like, hit it.
Hit it. Yes. Yeah. Join the journey. Learn with
Yeah.
us. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.